Hey, this is Matt Shoup with The Gentle Art of Leadership. I'm here today with Steve Earl to talk about one of the most important topics that we don't speak about a lot in leadership and entrepreneurship. Check it out. Hey, thanks for tuning into this week's episode. Would you make sure to please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel here? And please share this episode with somebody whose life it will make better. Steve Earl, what's up?
Hey, Matt.
Good to have you here, man.
Good to be here. Good to be here. I'm excited about your podcasts. I really liked them.
Well, I never thought I'd be interviewing father-in-law. We gotta just lay it out there for everybody, right?
I surely interviewed you, man. Years ago.
Our stories connected 2 decades ago.
Wow. Yeah.
I remember knocking on the door. I happened to be down in town, right?
Yes.
In Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
And this guy comes knocking on your door. What was your first impression?
Oh my, who is this guy? Who is this guy? And it was short and it was sweet and it was direct and to the point. And I'm interested in your daughter and, all of this stuff. And it's like, we're on for a ride here.
And here we are 2 decades later in the podcast studio.
That's crazy. That's good.
Share a little bit just about your story and what you're doing now, what we just got done doing, because we're about to dive into some stuff that I think is going to be, it's heavy stuff. It's a big topic, but it's so important in leadership, so important with everybody, I think, especially men in leadership positions, because it's just stuff that we don't deal with a lot. But it's brought me so much value to deal with it personally. So I don't want to tease the audience too much, but talk about what you do and who you are and your story here.
Well, I'm a licensed professional counselor and a licensed addictions counselor in private practice in Colorado Springs. I've been counseling for over 50 years, which makes me old and maybe certifiable. I think the certifiable part will become evident here. But it is something that has been important to me. It's been a part of my life. Big part of my recovery, and I come at what I do personally as well as professionally. I grew up in a family that had some particular trauma. I left there as soon as I could. I left there the morning after graduation, and my graduation present, we didn't have a lot of money, was a scratch and dent set of suitcases. So my parents... we love you, but, goodbye. And you're going to make it, but you can't come back, kind of thing. And that's who it was. And I certainly was ready to get away from there and discover the world.
So talk about that. So what does that discovery look like for you? Because, we just had a great training for the jiu-jitsu coaches up here where we talked about just trauma awareness and what trauma is, what that looks like, how to identify it. You shared some of your story, and thank you for that. That was awesome. Talk about that journey a little bit of stepping out of the nest and the experience you had as a kid and what the world looked like after that.
Well, I went from a farm situation to big city situation. I went from a farm to St. Paul, Minnesota. I began college in the fall, but worked there the summer before. And I had a basketball scholarship and blew out my knee and totally lost the scholarship and lost everything else. But it kicked some other directions. I became involved in a small church in the inner city of St. Paul. So I went from the farm to an area called Rice Street, which was very much a Polish ghetto or a Polish inner city group in St. Paul, and started working with gangs. It was a very interesting time. If you were accepted into the community, you were safe as if you were in your mother's arms. It was wonderful. And we went to court with them a couple of times. And so we became golden. And there were a couple of gangs that were around, and they were starting to be torn apart by drugs. And that became an interest as far as needing to learn more about drugs. They were doing inhalants, sniffing of gas, sniffing of transmission fluid and glues and that type of thing. And it was real crazy. and it was tearing the gangs up. But I went from there into an early program that taught chemical dependency. It was a 2-year program, but it was one of the most incredible programs in the United States. People that came out of that program were hired or above people that had master's degrees. It was some of the most famous people in the country came out of that program in the fields of addiction. And so I went to school for 2 years there, met someone, Sharon Wegscheider, who was Sharon Wegscheider Cruz. And she became the mother of addiction and family. And she invited me to work with her at a place called the Johnson Institute, which was an international applied research and training place. Most people know about intervention. Intervention came from the Johnson Institute, for example. And got to work with some phenomenal people in that group. I was the kid. I was 24, 25 years old when I went there. And now I find myself being kind of the last person standing out of that group, which is a very strange phenomena. But Sharon is somebody that I love dearly. She lives in Lafayette, and we get together every couple of months, and I just spend the afternoon still talking and learning from her. She wrote 19 books. I have not. And her husband, we lost him a couple years ago, was Dr. Joe Cruz, and Dr. Joe Cruz started the Betty Ford Center.
Wow.
And so, they're kind of, I consider them to be addiction royalty. As far as the recovery field, they really affected a lot of people in doing that.
So what brought you into the Polish neighborhood? So kind of connect those dots from like basketball scholarship, blow out the knee. Hey, I'm going to this Polish neighborhood.
Well,
how did you connect those dots? Just curious.
There was a small church about 4 blocks away from campus. Didn't have a car at the time. I would go to that church. Well, that church had another small church in the inner city area. And so they would haul us over, and we just got to know the people there. Oh, man. And like I said, very accepted. But some wild times, invited over to people's houses, for dinner and stuff. And you're eating dinner, and they open a cupboard, and the cockroaches scatter. So you're choking down, choking down dinner, and but being just living with hospitality and getting to know the people. They're very, very real people.
Yeah. So so you're young buck, working with royalty, right, in the addiction space. So yeah, where do things go from there?
Where do things go from there? I worked there for 6 years at the Johnson Institute. Sharon left, and I took over the program at that time. While at the Johnson Institute, I worked with a lot of tribes, a lot of Native American tribes here in the United States and Canada, Inuit tribes in Alaska, even some work in Mexico. And that was fantastic experience because I knew family and addictions, that was something they really related to. One, just an example, we were working with the Northern Cheyenne tribe up in Busby and Lame Deer, Montana. And other people were talking, and they're very good speakers, and they were talking about addiction, and they were talking about intervention, and they were talking about recovery. And I was asked to talk about addiction and family. And when I started talking about addiction and family, the auditorium was filled with people. They started sobbing. And powerful experience. And we worked on helping them set up, I was asked to set up a outpatient treatment program for their teens in their high school, because addiction on the reservation is, tearing apart the reservations, has for some time. And it's most people on the reservation, many people that die before their time because of addiction, violence, accidents, overdose, those kinds of things. So it was amazing people and was accepted at high levels within the tribe, not all levels. I appreciate that. I'm Anglo.
Yeah.
But it was, I learned a lot from them. I also, working there, was training social actions, military personnel. And, so I was throughout the United States, various bases, and then over in Italy, Greece, Crete, Turkey, France, a little bit. And so I was traveling all over as a young guy,
And when did you know that, this is what I want to do with my life, right? So you're kind of young, you're getting involved, you're working under these huge mentors, right? Huge names in the space. When did it become hey, this is what I want to do?
That was, I probably, in retrospect, it was part of my thinking in middle school. There was interest. Here I was, farm, nowhere. There was interest in the martial arts. There was interest maybe in what I saw as social work, that type of thing. That kind of started then. It was, I knew that being the oldest of 5 kids and on a small farm that, I could not take over any part of it or could not afford it or anything else. And, they needed the farm for the other people. So I knew that I would have to go elsewhere. But to have those dreams, and it's like, okay, I got involved in some things that were a risk, but man, I maybe had a dream, but it became much bigger than I could even imagine. Blow me away, imagine. And to work with people like Virginia Satir, to work with Sharon, to work, with the other people was, and to be accepted by them and to be respected by them. It was, it's a powerful thing.
So now you're the old buck. You went from the young buck to the old buck. One of the last standing.
Yeah.
5 decades though, right? So 5 decades in addiction and trauma recovery. And, one of the things we were talking about offline is in the space we're in, we have a lot of business owners, business leaders, just people in the leadership space where there's a lot on the line every day. And one of the things I always say, and it's just so true from my personal story, is your business, your organization, whatever it is, whoever it is that you're leading, that will only grow to the degree that you do. And I meet a lot of men, especially, that just haven't gotten over their stuff. They haven't gone back to their story and explored it. Everybody's gone through trauma, and you get to work with people in that space. So would love to dig into that today. You look at people that just don't even realize or remember they did, or they're totally avoiding it. And then they start to, I remember when I started lifting the lid up a little bit, I'm like, ooh, that's ugly in there. That's messy in there.
Yeah.
Where do you start? How do you get started with people? What kind of advice would you give to somebody watching this that, hey, you got some stuff you got to deal with, and it's becoming present in your business, and it's stopping your business from growing, or your family, or whatever that is? Where would you start somebody?
Right. I've always strived for integrity. There was a concept back then that we were training other counselors and stuff. It was called, the concept was called congruence. And what that meant is that what is on the inside is what you see on the outside. You don't live a double life. You don't live a number of things. The whole involved in living a false life, living, whether that's addictions or other types of issues, and I certainly had those that I was dealing with and got into recovery over. Recovery demands that we live an honest life, or as AA puts it, a rigorously honest life. Because when we're living a false life, it's just an ongoing con. And the more we're involved in addictions of different sorts, the more we are lying and conning other people. But when we're in a lifestyle of lying and conning other people, we have to first lie to ourselves, which is all just really, really crazy. Really crazy. And so I was lying to myself. I didn't know who I was. I was putting on different costumes to, walk tough and talk tough and be in charge, kind of thing, to hide that when we aren't congruent, when we aren't honest with ourselves, what we do is we have fear and anxiety straight out. That's our life. We're afraid of the mistakes we're going to make, what's going to happen when somebody finds me out, all the lies. We live in shame. I had grown up with trauma, and so shame says that you're defective. There is something wrong with you. Don't know exactly what it is, but obviously it's there. So every mistake we make wasn't a mistake. It's like, no, this happened because I'm a mistake.
Yeah.
And, so you spend a lot of time throwing up dust and working hard and running hard and covering mistakes, or trying to cover your shame, trying to hide your shame. And that doesn't work out, gets complicated. I forgot my lies. I forgot,
you forget your own, right?
Yeah,
you forget your own that you're telling yourself, that you're telling everybody.
Yeah. And then there was the whole thing, I think, before I got into recovery, I figured that, I wasn't going to live beyond 25. And a lot of people get that. And so I didn't have to be responsible too much or do the hard thing or look under the cover too much. And, so I was doing crazy things, and even people that were crazy were saying, what you're doing is crazy stuff. Yeah. Did a little stint with a biker gang for a while. That was part of the community. And since I was accepted in the community and knew the president of the little, it wasn't a little gang, it was a very serious thing. I wasn't looking for colors or anything, but I was allowed to ride with them. And then, when they call you a dead rider, and what that was is that you're so crazy on a motorcycle, you're going to be dead. Yeah. And when you have bikers calling you a dead rider, there's something seriously wrong, something really bent with it. Was angry to cover the scared stuff. Lost a relationship, and one day, in my own wisdom, decided that I knew where that person was going to be. I was going to show up for breakfast, and whatever boyfriend was there was not going to like it, and we were going to go out in the yard, and I was going to enjoy finishing it. Yeah. But I wasn't thinking real straight, and showing up, and it would have been assaults, and it would have been jail time, intentional, planned, the whole 9 yards. But I was just thinking of somebody was going to get beat. And there was an intervention there where I showed up to buy some cigarettes. And there was a friend that was getting eggs or bacon for breakfast that was staying at this place, and came in, and she knew what I was there for, and she talked me out of it. And for whatever reason, I listened and walked away. And that was then I got into recovery, and I could start letting go of some of the stuff.
So was that the big call out? Like, was that the big moment where there was a real big turning point where you're like, holy cow, I was about to go do some not good things, and then look back and say, oh, and I've been crazy.
Well, that I think gradual. I'm a slow learner in some things. When I got into recovery, I was I got a sponsor. He was real old. He was in his late 40s or something. I thought he was ancient, and and somebody told me, if you're going to get a sponsor, get somebody that is not your age, and somebody that's mean, and that'll let you know straight up what's going on. So after our meeting, we're having coffee, and there's all kinds of. I'd been in a couple months, and all kinds of things were going on, and I was talking to him about this and talking to him about that, and this was going to happen. This court thing was going on and different things. And after a while, he's listening. He said, "What time is it?" So I told him what time it is, and he says, "Where are you right now?" "Well, I'm talking to you." But I had a lot more to say, And he was relaxed, and so I'm talking some more. And then, he said, "What time is it?" And I thought, rude. It was about 5 minutes since you asked last time. He said, "Where are you right now?" "Well, I'm trying to talk to you." But again, I'm a slow learner and had more to say. And so I'm talking, and a couple of minutes, he says, "What time is it?" And I said, "What? You have someplace to be?" And he said, "No." He said, "No." He says, "I'm here I'm here. I'm here to listen. Just want to point some things out to you. You're totally living in the past, dragging pain and resentments. And you totally are in fear of the future, living in the future." And he said, "You do not have any idea of what time it is at this given moment and where your backside is right now." He was a little bit more colorful, but suggested I couldn't find it with both hands in a mirror.
Right.
And the assignment he gave me was, he said, "You have no idea of what it is to live right now, today." And that was a changing moment. His assignment was practice. What time is it? Where are you right now? And if it's not happening, it's not happening. And so he began to teach me how to not live. My whole life had been in fear. Preparing for the worst case scenario. A and B had happened. Man, prepare for the rest of the alphabet. And it's insane.
So you see a lot of people, they're pulling up the past, living in the past, and then jumping forward into the three different worst cases. Or you just said in the training, right, putting up all the movie screens to see these things play out.
All the monitors that they're worried about, and they go back and forth. Worry. What we do with worry is we've got this life that we have, the day-to-day things and the day-to-day struggles. But I guess that's not enough for us. What we do with worry is we create a separate life, a different life, a second life that is totally negative, that is future-based, and is a total lie. So we live two lives for sure, and neither one of them usually is healthy. But when it comes to worry, in thinking about worry is an attempt to control the future, which is an attempt to be God. I don't make for a good God. I cannot control the future. The Bible mentions that 366 times. Do not fear, do not worry, do not be anxious about. There's a reason for it. And it's always a command. God doesn't come in and take it away from you. We have to turn it over to God.
Yep.
One reason is, in a very real, subtle way, whatever a person believes, to worry about the future is an attempt to control the future, is an attempt to be God. That's one thing. The second thing is what we worry about, our body treats as real. I can worry about a fear in the future and my body will start acting, it will have a fear response, elevated heart rate, lower respiratory rate, et cetera, cortisol pumping through the system. I can put it out there and nothing has happened except up here, up in the head.
Well, I see that in a lot of business owners, a lot of business leaders. And then, COVID pops up. And then I remember the pictures we started painting, right? And just where that goes. And what do they say? 99% of the stuff you're worrying about never happens.
Oh, it is right up there. It's most of what and there's been all kinds of studies on worry. It's been studied forever, and what the studies usually are is they pick people that are self-acclaimed worriers that think they're really good at it. I don't know, Catholic moms, Jewish moms in general, other guys. My family, I grew up with some people that worrying was a deal, and I learned the worry. And then they have them keep track of their worries over a period of time and the results, what the worries are, and they track it over a period of time. And, right at 90% of worries flat out don't happen, or 86 to 90, depending on the study. And then of what does happen, 6%, 7% didn't happen exactly as they worried about, but it's a give me.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. The bottom line is worry is 4 to 6% accurate. A colossal waste of time.
It totally steals the present. Totally steals the joy you could be experiencing in the present. Yeah.
Yes. I was given a talk one time to a group of counselors and pastors, and we were talking about worry, and this woman kind of bursts out laughing and kind of thing, and it was like, oh, that came out, didn't it? And everybody else laughed. And I just said, if you don't mind, do you mind sharing what you were thinking? And she said, oh, this is so much my sister-in-law.
Hey, just want to give a big shout out to one of our sponsors, Imprint Digital. If you're a small business owner, one of the things that you need to navigate to be successful is all things online and digital in terms of marketing and your messaging. Imprint Digital, they're the real deal. They are the professionals, and they know this world inside and out. Make sure to visit their website at imprint-digital.com. Hey, if you're a Christian business owner, you have to check out one of our sponsors, the Foundry Advisory. The Foundry is a Christian peer advisory group where we get together on a monthly basis to discuss everything that's important in our life, our business, our families, and our faith. I'm a member and I love being a part of this group. You've got to check them out at thefoundryadvisory.com. When you go to their website, make sure you check out their Refresh event, which is happening January 11th through the 13th, 2024, up in Estes Park. That can be found at thefoundryadvisory.com/refresh. Hey, if you're a business owner and you need to do some renovation in your space or possibly build a building from the ground up, you have to connect with one of our sponsors, Mendel Construction. Mendel Construction is a commercial construction company that's been around since 1997, serving all of Colorado. They can do a small tenant finish all the way up to ground-up construction of a new building for your business. Check them out at mendelandcompany.com. That's MENDEL and company.com. A big shout out and thank you to one of our sponsors, M&D Painting and Roofing. M&D was actually founded by my wife Emily and I back in 2005, and for the last 2 decades we've been here in northern Colorado, of one of the leaders in residential and commercial repainting, as well as most recently installing residential roofs. So if you need to paint, re-roof, you got hit by a hailstorm, we can take care of whatever your home needs from top to bottom. You can find us on the web at mandepainting.com.
She says the family story is she has had over 1,000 major crises in her life, and 4 of them have actually been real. Yeah. And that just paints it as to how it is. So worry, we think it protects ourselves. We treat it as a lover that we're preparing for the future and that type of thing. Worry isn't a lover. Worry is a lion bitch. Mm-hmm. And we have to treat it as a lion bitch. We think we're in control. There is a difference. There is worry, but then there are concerns. And as a business person and those kinds of things, we have to sort it out. A concern is, okay, this issue is coming up. What are my action steps? concerns are actionable.
Yeah.
Worries are not actionable. They're this downward whirlpool that just drags us down and creates more and more worry, and we just get lost in this second life that isn't real.
Yeah. And I mean, it's an addiction, right? I mean, you can put it right up there with anything
Enemas.
else, right?
If enemas were it, I mean, that's as much as that's as unpleasant as what worry can be. But it'll rob our life and then demand more. As you know, in life and stuff, was in private practice, and my wife was diagnosed with cancer. And so the worries kicked in, and it was a young cancer, and it was a aggressive cancer, and it was going on. And God taught me a lot about worry during that time. There were days where you had to fight it all the time, and they just became days where you're rushed away with tsunami, but days where I'd have to stop myself 100 times a day from going down and worrying. And what we had an 8.5 year battle of cancer, several different rounds. And, what we worried about was losing her death. And it happened. In fact, yesterday was the 26th anniversary of Rachel's death. But we did it well. And what we could not worry about, or what we could not take into account as far as worry goes, is how God shows up with things. How we weren't abandoned, how the fight that comes up, the love that is there, the people that can show up at that time, the how it forged our relationship with our children, and and how it brought Emily and Kaylee very close to me post losing Rachel. How Rachel is formed into a family. How they became even going through trials. Two girls that lost their mom at 12 and 15. And they really needed their mom. But how, as they grieved and such, they knew that they were loved. It made it strong. I mean, Rachel was an incredible mom. And, and now, later on in life, Carrie was brought into our life, and Carrie's been our gift. She's been a part of a lot of healing, and is very much a friend and a mom to the girls and Nana to the grandkids. And, her heart and love is absolutely for all those people. So, but getting back to worry, most of what we worried about, we couldn't factor in the other beautiful things that took place.
So what do you tell? So looking back at that whole story, going through the cancer and the loss and post, what would you say to somebody going through that's just overridden with that fear and that worry? What were some of the big lessons and takeaways and some of the beauty in that you were getting at, as painful as that is?
Cancer changes everything. Remember reading an article in the Denver paper, an editorial, and that person had cancer, and he wrote that when you have cancer, a good day is halfway through breakfast. You realize that cancer hasn't crossed your mind. And so it changes everything. to get support, and to get support from people who know and who care, and to take it a day at a time, and to live, to live. We made the choice early on. Some people, when they have cancer in the family, they choose to separate from the relationship, thinking that if this goes bad, if we lose this person, then it's not going to hurt as much. Crazy. We made the decision that we were going to go for it, and meaning our relationship was close anyway, but we were not going to separate. We were going to face things together. We were going to, love our children and be there for our children. And we were going to do everything we can. Of course, a lot of money was tied up medically. Unbelievable amount of money was tied up in medical and that type of thing. I would worry about that. Rachel would say, when I get into a bad place, she would say, Steve, your mind is too young to be out on its own. I mean, I would get into worry and, usually fatigued and just wiped out, overwhelmed. And I would have the family under the bridge. That was the bottom line. That was the only way. It was under the bridge and scavenging for things. And, she had, she could lift up with more faith. And, in those things, it's easy to feel like spiritually you're abandoned, or that other people don't understand. It is life, and you need to live that. But for people to get support, to find people that care about them in the relationship, to go for it, and then into grief, to go for that too. Your heart, I knew at the end, that my heart would be ripped out and torn up, and the girls would be hurting and those kinds of things. But I also learned that grief was important to face. Grief is honoring, loving, because if the person didn't mean anything to you, you wouldn't be grieving. And, she meant everything to us. And then as we grieve, we incorporate their life into our lives. When Carrie and I, a couple years later, got married, she came into our family, and one of the things that she said is, we are a family of 5. That, it wasn't just her and I and the 2 girls. And, Rachel was a strong influence there too, in a good and solid way. And the girls have become incredible women. Very proud of them. Very, very proud of them.
And thanks for sharing all that. So how do people that that are constantly worrying or should be grieving, they're not grieving? You work with them a lot.
Yes.
In a lot of different particular places. So how do you start people on that journey, or how do you recommend, obviously to get professional, right? Get professional help, but just somebody tuning in, like how would they start to unpack some of that stuff if they haven't?
We don't, as a society, we do not know how to grieve. Many societies in the world allow families some sort of sign of grief, and 6 months to a year to grieve. And it's a year before, if you're paying attention, before your feet feel like you're on the ground again. And that doesn't mean that grief is over. Grief goes on, but we take it a bite at a time, a little bit at a time, and honestly, and we begin to work with it. But in our society, most people run from grief or run from problems, all sorts of problems, run from issues. Again, most people live out of fear and anxiety within their life. Early on in life, I had a loss, and there was a relative that came to me, and he was a pilot in the Korean War, fighter pilot in World War II in the Korean War, and so he had had a lot of loss. And he was the head of a major riverboat company at that time, and he had lost a wife early on. And he came to me and he said, most people, he said, when it comes to grief and pain and stuff, they run away from it. He said it's a mistake. You can run, and then pretty soon you look in your backyard and it's filled with grief, and then people get busy, and that's how they run, and they keep going and going and going, and then they're exhausted, and the grief rushes them, and it takes them over and really throws them. And he said, there's one thing you might as well know about grief and pain right now. He said, you can't go over it, and you can't go under it, and you can't go around either side of it, but you sure as hell can go right through it. And that made sense to me. And that was another, someone speaking into my life that made sense. And so I started to learn how to grieve at that point. I have a rocking chair that I still have in my office. It's a Kennedy rocker. And why I keep it in my office is that the hand grips are worn. Why? That was my grief chair. I would get in grief and it would be so intense. I would be gripping the arms, and it's actually wore down the wood. And but I learned to walk through, and I learned to, when we walk through it, then we can unload it and step into other things. And that's what people need to know is quit running. We can't outrun this. Grief will have its day when there's a loss.
And for those that don't step into it, because I'm thinking, well, what's the first step? Just step into it, right? But it's scary. It's hard. I mean, what is that advice you have from going through it yourself?
Well, I'm smiling because you said step into it. If you don't step into grief, I think you're going to step in to other things because you're trying to run from it. You're trying to medicate it. And most people with losses get into lousy relationships because they haven't finished the first. And relationships, for example, are a great medicator, except many times, and it doesn't have to be a death, it could be a divorce or something like that. They get into a relationship and it's as bad or worse than the first. It's because they haven't dealt with it. They're looking for the feel good. Other people get into drugs and alcohol and, those kinds of things. And, all of those end in bad places. Bad places.
Yeah. And so what you're doing on a daily basis now is you're working with people that are deep into that, right? That haven't grieved. They're in, they've stepped into other things, right? They've got.
Well, and I guess what I am saying is we will deal with grief. Mm-hmm. It's either, are we going to deal with it directly and go through it and be positive, or is it going to become a destructive factor in our life? But we will deal with it.
It's powerful stuff, man.
My best friend and I were at a gathering, a party of some sort, and somebody came up and asked what I do. And for whatever reason, I told them, normally I say, something else. I was talking about Sharon Wegscheider and stuff, and she used to travel around and speak a lot. And somebody asked her what she did, and instead she would say she was a nun. I had some comebacks like that. I mean, it's something innocuous that you don't ask it anymore. But for whatever reason, I told people what I did. And my friend piped up and said, what I deal with. I deal with addictions. I deal with loss. I deal with abuse. I deal with trauma. I deal with all kinds of addictions. And he pipes in and says, yeah, anything remotely fun.
You're a fun killer.
Just sticking it to me. But, it's something that's been the heart that God's put in me.
Yeah.
And, some of the experiential training has been tough training, but powerful training.
And when you take people through that and they're willing to step into the grief and deal with it, like just deal with their stuff, right? Their trauma and their past, what's the beauty you see on the other side? When people, I don't even want to say come out of it, because I don't know that you ever come out of it, right? You may still always be walking through it. What are some of those things that you see that would be encouraging for somebody to hear this?
There is, yes, I never wanted to be an expert in bereavement or for that to be on my shingle, but it's turned out to be. First, they get to keep the memories and relationship. If we avoid grief, we keep everything at arm's length, and we start possibly forgetting things or other things. It just doesn't work. It's not a part. We have a relationship with this person. We love this person. Grieve it, incorporate them into our lives, and so it becomes a settled thing. Yes, it does involve loss, but it becomes okay. For the first year of grief, for example, I set out to avoid all relationships and everything else, and because I knew what a medicator that was. And also, my sister warned me that, gosh, you stayed with somebody until they died, and so all these women are going to be coming after you. Watch out. And she was absolutely right. Joni was very wise in that. I felt like an old vampire movie sometimes. I wanted to carry a cross and, stick up back away. And, there's a... So anyway, I stayed away from, and then when the time was right, Carrie, Carrie and I met over euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide. It was a video that Focus on the Family was doing, and Carrie was the bioethics person that was on the video, and it was built on our family story, and that's where we met. And that was only a little over a month after Rachel died. Anyway, we made that video, and it was a powerful thing for Carrie's memory to work on. And Carrie and I didn't see each other for a year. Every once in a while, I need these pictures for the video and backstory on this or that or the other thing, and I just knew that she had gone through some loss shortly after we met. But, anyway, we didn't have contact for a year. And then we started having contact. Actually, hospice and the girls pretty much said, Dad, you need a life. And, you need to get out there a little bit. And I'm going, what? How? What do you do? How do you do this? Okay, you go out for coffee and, that type of thing. Well, Carrie came in, but she said, I'm really glad you took the time to grieve because, it's a part of things every once in a while, but it's not an issue. It's not a ghost in our family that is a negative type of thing. It was clean. She had a place to come into in our lives, that open door. We, throughout life, will, if we're living, we will collect grief throughout life. If we deal with the grief, it doesn't all go away, but if we deal with it, we're in a better place because a new grief will come along. With every new grief in life, all the other grief in our life comes back comes back. If we dealt with it, it comes back for a visit. If we haven't dealt with the past grief and we've run from it, it moves in. And that is so real.
And I've heard you say before you're having a conversation and you said coming and setting up shop in your house, or you're giving them a room rent free.
Yeah,
talk about that a little bit,
rental
though.
space.
Yeah, because I remember when you shared that with me, like that just gave me perspective on. I can't even remember what worry or whatever
I think
plight I was having, but I was like, that's good. Talk about that, because that was a really good one.
Well, I think that has to do with worry and definitely business worries and stuff, that we create false situations or possible situations, possible future things, and it's a worst case scenario, and resentments over people, but we don't deal with those resentments, and so we have this resentment towards somebody or another business or something where we've been slighted and stuff, and it's like we sit around and sip poison hoping that they'll die, because it takes up all this rental space in our head, or these people do, or the worries do. And it is rent-free, and they're living their lives to whatever degree. And, we just have to work harder at sending them bad juju so they'll suffer. We're the ones that are suffering, and that's why we are not to worry. We're to turn it over. And when we get into worry and we try to figure it out, or fear and we try to figure it out, or if we've got something in our life that is something that isn't good for us, and we try to figure it out, I've noticed that it kicks my butt every time. If I try to wrestle with it, it kicks my backside. I really need to spiritually turn it over to God immediately, and not try to figure this out, or not try to wrestle it and conquer it.
Well, I see so many business people, you're in the leadership in the business space, and they're, man, we've got to get this figured out. I can handle this on my own. But yeah, just talk about how you incorporate, because you're a Christian counselor,
right?
So how you incorporate the biblical perspective and bringing Jesus into that equation when people are dealing with all of these things, when they're worried and they're weary and they're grieving, and just all this stuff is piling up, and they just have to have it together, right? They've got to figure it out on their own. So what would you add to that piece of the puzzle?
I think, a lot of counseling is we identify, their story and the lies, and we start looking at the lies through adult eyes, in a sense, through spiritual eyes, or hand in hand with Christ. It depends on their belief. I deal with people. I do not hang out a Christian shingle. I'm very involved in the Christian counseling community, and in working and training and, meeting with them. So to some people it's known, to some people it's not, but I meet people where they are. And the principles of honesty, of grief, of not worrying, all of those are biblical principles, and they're sound. And so I have no qualms bringing up, biblical wisdom. Or a long time ago, this was written about it. Fits today. Not to worry, what that means. Run from sexual temptation, what that means. It means run. There's no...
Don't kind of slow stroll. Run.
Yeah.
Out of there.
Yeah. There's no, okay, I'll just pretend that it's not there. And no, run. Run. And, we think we're all that powerful, but we get our backside handed to us on a regular basis when we struggle with things that we have a problem with. Yeah. And it's recovery too. The first step is we're powerless over whatever that is, alcohol, drugs, porn, and that our life has become unmanageable. In other words, the second is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. That's because our life has become insane. We need some sanity. And then the third step is turning our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand Him. We need to take the things that become negative gods in our life, negative addictions, worry, that involves worry and lying, and just the whole morass of crap that we get into, and we need to replace that with a positive God.
Love it. You've shared so much today. I appreciate you, man, and your story, and you're a cool father-in-law. Not too many people can say they have cool in-laws.
Well,
so love that,
Matt. When you, like I said, whenever you've talked, the way you think is a gift. I listen.
Thank you.
And the way you approach business and your creativity and everything else, and the books, love it. And we all, I'm old back at the home. No, we need to stay students. We don't get to a place where we figure it out, but we need to keep learning. Yeah. We need to keep going back.
Love it.
We need to keep praying. I love it too.
Hey, before we go, we do something cool here on Gentle Art of Leadership. So you've been in the building before, so you've seen the color wall, but you grabbed your favorite color, and we have everybody that comes on the show leave a statement. It's a statement they want to leave with the world when they leave it. So what is your statement?
Well, first of all, I grab a color, but I'm colorblind. And so, Emily, my daughter, your wife, reported me. She said, "Oh, that's close enough to white." So I said, strive to find your true self, the unique self that God created in you.
Love it. That's a wrap. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Matt. This is great.
Hey, if you're a faith-based father and you have a son who is entering into adolescence and manhood, you've got to check out an experience that we have June 2024. It is the Father-Son Hike of a Lifetime on the Camino de Santiago in Spain. I'm going to be taking a group of men and their sons over to Spain to hike some of the most beautiful scenery through northern Spain on the Camino de Santiago. We're going to hike 6 days, 70 miles, 200,000 steps, and have completely disconnected, unplugged, uninterrupted time with our sons. We are going to grow and bond and deepen our relationships with our sons through some very intentionally curated adventures, challenges, and experiences. And we're going to do so in the company of other faith-based men who have the same desire to grow and deepen their story with their son. If you're interested in this adventure with us, go to mattshoup.com, click the Go to Spain button, and check out the Father-Son Hike of a Lifetime.